a rising black CEO, Naomi Caldwell, begins receiving unnerving messages that reference buried pieces of her past. When threats escalate, she hires elite bodyguard Elias Ward, only to discover he knows far more about her childhood than expected. As surveillance intensifies and a hooded figure stalks her movements, Naomi learns her father was entangled with a powerful syndicate whose secrets still shadow her success. Elias, once tasked with protecting her family, reveals parts of this hidden history as enemies close in. Together they return to Naomi's roots, uncover betrayals, and confront the truth her father left behind, setting the stage for a final reckoning. Iron dawn settled over the city as Naomi Caldwell stepped from her armored sedan, feeling the weight of an unseen threat trailing her every recent night. She moved like someone used to power but newly unsettled, a woman whose instincts whispered danger without offering shape. The streetlights flickered, casting fractured halos that followed her toward the private lobby entrance. Inside, silence gathered around her like velvet, but Naomi's pulse kept its sharpened rhythm. Anonymous messages had begun appearing on her personal devices, cryptic lines hinting at buried chapters she had never shared publicly. She had dismissed the first few as glitches, then as targeted harassment. Now they arrived with precision, referencing moments no stranger could possibly know at all. Tonight, the boardroom windows reflected her unease when she entered for the emergency meeting. Executives murmured, trading theories about security breaches and corporate espionage. Naomi listened, outwardly composed, inwardly spiraling. She felt watched long before she confirmed it. Someone had crossed from mere intrusion into intimate territory. Someone who understood the shadows trailing her success more intimately than any rival. After the meeting dissolved, her head of operations urged her to hire personal protection. Naomi initially refused. She had risen as a black woman in an unforgiving industry by refusing fear any foothold. Yet the messages kept escalating, revealing fragments of childhood memories she had locked away, pieces only a handful of people once close to her could recall. That night, she stood in her penthouse suite facing the skyline, its shimmering glass towers resembling watchful eyes. She relented. Security protocols could no longer shield her alone. She needed someone trained, discreet, loyal without question. The agency promised their best operative, a man with an unblemished record and a reputation for reading threats before they materialized. His name, Elias Ward. He arrived the following morning without theatrics, stepping from the elevator with a stillness that drew attention without demanding it. Tall, broad-shouldered, restrained, Elias moved like a man who carried discipline in every breath. Naomi felt the shift in the air as he crossed the lobby. It wasn't intimidation. It was awareness, quiet, all-observing, bordering on unsettling from the first moment. Elias introduced himself with a measured nod, his voice low and calm. Naomi returned the gesture, though a sliver of caution threaded her thoughts. Something in his eyes suggested he recognized more than her title or reputation. It was as if he had studied her movements long before officially meeting her. She couldn't decide whether the sensation comforted or unnerved her. Over the next hours, Elias reviewed building schematics, evaluated staff habits, and tested access points with meticulous precision. Naomi watched from her office doorway, struck by how effortlessly he navigated unfamiliar terrain. He seemed to understand unspoken patterns, the rhythm of her schedule, the subtleties of her company's culture, even the vulnerable corners of her routine. He read the environment like a coded map. By midday, he had already identified 3 vulnerabilities in her daily movements. Naomi found herself unexpectedly impressed, even relieved. Yet beneath that relief stirred something heavier, curiosity. She sensed Elias watching not just corridors and cameras but her. Not intrusively, deliberately, as though cataloging details for reasons deeper than duty. Whenever their eyes met, a flicker passed through his expression, quickly buried. Late afternoon brought another message. This one appeared on her encrypted work tablet, bypassing firewalls her own engineers had designed. Naomi froze. The line was short, chilling. "He's closer than you think." She showed Elias. He studied the screen, jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Then he asked a question that startled her completely, whether she had ever confided sensitive memories to anyone outside her family. Her breath thinned. The memories referenced in the earlier messages were fragments she'd rarely spoken aloud, moments of hardship and loss that shaped her climb but never entered interviews or public narratives. She answered cautiously. Elias nodded, absorbing more than her words. His silence stretched, weighted with understanding she didn't remember offering him. Something in that stillness hinted he knew exactly what the messages implied. Evening settled with a copper glow. Naomi left for an off-site dinner meeting, Elias shadowing her with unobtrusive precision. On the drive, she felt the tension tightening around her like a drawn bowstring. Elias remained focused, scanning passing vehicles, intersections, rooftops. Yet occasionally his gaze flicked to her reflection in the window, as though comparing the woman before him to one he already knew. At the restaurant, Naomi's meeting unfolded without issue, but her attention drifted repeatedly to Elias standing near the exit, solid, unreadable. The anonymous threats had unnerved her, but his presence unsettled her differently, waking questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. When she rose to leave, he opened the door with a familiarity that felt older than the 10 hours they'd known each other. As they returned to the car, the street hummed with muted nightlife. Then Naomi noticed a figure across the road, mostly hidden beneath a hood. Elias noticed first. His posture changed subtly, shifting his body between her and the stranger. The hooded figure retreated into shadow, but not before glancing directly at Naomi, a glance filled with recognition, not curiosity. Back in the penthouse, adrenaline still chased her thoughts. Elias double-checked every lock, every blind, every camera feed. Naomi watched him, aware of a truth she wasn't ready to voice. He behaved not like someone encountering her danger for the first time, but someone reacquainting himself with a threat he had anticipated long before being hired. And she felt the weight of that implication. Long after Elias retreated to his designated room, Naomi stood alone in the dim spill of the city's glow, replaying every unsettling detail of the day. Questions tightened inside her like knots she could neither loosen nor ignore. Who was truly coming after her, and why did Elias behave like someone already entangled in her past? She sensed the story unfolding around her was older than today, older even than their meeting, and she was only beginning to see its outline. Morning settled over the penthouse in muted gold, brushing the glass walls with a deceptive calm. Naomi woke before her alarm, her body carrying the imprint of a night spent fighting shadows she could not name. The city stretched beneath her like a restless beast, unaware of the tension humming inside her chest. She dressed in measured motions, each gesture betraying the unease she refused to acknowledge aloud. When she stepped into the hallway, she found Elias already awake, standing near the window with his back to her, posture alert in a way that suggested he'd barely slept at all. 97. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, offering a nod that masked questions she sensed he was reluctant to voice. Something about his presence felt heavier today, as if the hooded figure from the night before lingered in his mind. Naomi felt a shiver pass through her, half fear, half intuition. Elias followed her to the kitchen, scanning every threshold with the instinctive awareness of someone who expected danger to slip through any unguarded inch. Naomi watched him silently, wondering not for the first time what experiences had carved that vigilance into him. 101. Over breakfast, Naomi briefed him on her schedule: investor calls, an ethics committee meeting, and a visit to one of the company's community outreach centers. Elias listened without interrupting, though his eyes narrowed subtly at the final entry. "You didn't mention that yesterday," he said. Naomi met his gaze, unsure why his tone felt more personal than procedural. "It wasn't scheduled yesterday," she replied. Elias held her stare for a beat too long, then nodded, yet something in his expression suggested he didn't fully believe her. She felt irritation rise, quickly swallowed by a growing sense of curiosity. 103. Their ride to the corporate tower unfolded beneath a thick silence. Naomi tried focusing on her notes, but her thoughts kept drifting toward Elias's behavior, how he positioned himself between her and every window, how he assessed passing vehicles with almost clinical precision, how he seemed to anticipate her movements before she made them. When the car paused at a red light, a bus rolled past bearing an advertisement featuring her face. Elias watched it, jaw tightening. "Visibility creates patterns," he murmured. "Patterns create opportunity." Naomi tried to interpret the warning beneath his words, but his expression revealed nothing. 103. Inside the tower, staff greeted Naomi with a blend of admiration and caution, sensing her recent distress without daring to mention it. Elias shadowed her steps with silent discipline. During her investor call, he stood near the office window, watching the streets below as though expecting a threat to materialize at any second. Naomi found herself distracted by the silhouette he cast across her floor, solid, unwavering, strangely protective. When the meeting ended, she approached him, searching his face for the truth he kept hidden. "You're tense," she observed softly. Elias hesitated, then said, "Someone is testing boundaries. We haven't seen the last of them." 102. His words echoed uneasily as they traveled to the outreach center. Located in the neighborhood where Naomi once lived, before success reshaped her trajectory, the building stood as a testament to the struggles she rarely discussed. As they approached, memories tugged at her: crowded streets, narrow apartments, the metallic odor of fear that once clung to her childhood. Elias walked beside her with a familiarity that unsettled her. She wondered if he recognized the area or merely sensed its significance. When they entered the building, children ran through the halls, their laughter ringing like echoes from a past she wasn't ready to revisit. 103. Naomi greeted staff while Elias swept the room with his gaze, alert to every doorway and unfamiliar face. In the corner sat an elderly woman Naomi hadn't seen in years, Miss Hargrove, once her neighbor, now friendlier but unmistakably the same. Miss Hargrove's eyes brightened at Naomi's approach, then shifted toward Elias with a flicker of confusion. "My dear," she whispered, gripping Naomi's hand, "you've brought someone who walks like your father used to." Naomi froze. Her father, a man whose presence had been both anchor and storm, had disappeared from her life long before she built her empire. Elias's expression tightened. 102. Before Naomi could respond, a staff member interrupted with urgent news. Someone had been spotted photographing the building's entrance from across the street. Elias was already moving, guiding Naomi behind him as they approached the nearest window. Outside, the same hooded figure from the night before stood half-hidden behind a lamppost. Elias's voice dropped to a command. "Stay back." The figure lifted a phone, snapped a final picture, and vanished into the crowd with practiced ease. Naomi felt a hollow ache settle in her chest, a certainty that the stranger knew far more than they revealed. Elias's fists clenched at his sides. 104. When they returned to the car, Naomi confronted him. "You're not telling me everything." Elias didn't answer immediately. The car eased into traffic, tension thickening with every passing block. Finally, he exhaled. "I've seen tactics like this before, someone using your past to destabilize your present. Whoever they are, they know what matters to you. And they're closing in." Naomi studied his face, noting the battle between duty and something more personal. "Why does this feel familiar to you?" she asked quietly. Elias looked away, eyes shadowed with something she couldn't read. "Because some threats don't start in the present," he said. 103. That night, back in the penthouse, the air vibrated with unspoken truths. Naomi stood at the window, watching headlights smear across the city like restless ghosts. Elias remained nearby, his presence both reassuring and enigmatic. Naomi turned toward him, heart tightening with a question she could no longer avoid. "Elias, how much do you really know about my past?" His breath caught, barely, but enough for her to notice. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, rising like a warning. In the dim light, Naomi saw the truth flicker in his eyes. He wasn't just protecting her from the danger approaching. He was connected to it. 102. Night pressed against the penthouse windows like a dark tide rising, each wave thick with unspoken truth. Naomi stood in the muted glow of the city, feeling the fragile boundary between her present life and the history she'd buried tremble beneath her feet. Elias remained a few paces behind her, his presence a quiet storm she could sense without turning. She heard the faint shift in his breathing, the subtle hesitation of a man balancing duty against revelation. When she finally faced him, his expression carried the weight of years he hadn't yet named. 74. "Tell me," she whispered. The words fractured the silence. Elias met her gaze with a steadiness that wavered only at the edges. For a moment, he looked like someone who had run too far from a truth he never meant to keep. "Your past isn't as distant as you think," he said. "Some things don't stay buried." Naomi's pulse tightened. "Whose choice was that?" she asked. Elias didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked toward the window, the city's lights painting faint gold across his features. "It's not about choice," he murmured. "It's about consequence." 77. The night deepened around them as he began to explain. Not everything, not yet, but enough to bend her breath. Years ago, when Naomi was still clawing her way out of the neighborhoods that tried to swallow her, someone else had been watching. Not with malice. With purpose. Elias spoke of an unnamed organization operating between official channels, tracking at-risk youth with unusual potential, leaders shaped by trauma, resilience forged by circumstance. Naomi felt her stomach twist. "You mean surveillance," she said sharply. Elias didn't deny it. "Support," he corrected softly, though the word rang with uneasy edges. 79. He told her he had been a young operative then, barely 20, assigned to monitor a cluster of families in her neighborhood. His task was to observe patterns, vulnerabilities, and emerging threats. Naomi felt disbelief splinter into anger. "You watched my family," she said, voice trembling. Elias nodded. "Your father, especially. He had enemies, people who wanted leverage, information, power through intimidation. My job was to document threats and intercept them when possible." Naomi stepped back, remembering shards of nights filled with her father's whispered arguments, sudden disappearances, and the lingering scent of fear he never explained. 80. But Elias's next admission struck deeper. "You were on my list," he said quietly. "Not as a threat, never that. You were identified as a potential target. Someone vulnerable to the fallout of your father's entanglements." Naomi felt her breath stutter. Childhood memories, doors slamming, hurried departures, warnings to stay inside, flooded back with startling clarity. Elias continued, his words slow, measured, haunted. "I was supposed to keep distance. To observe. But there were nights your father disappeared, and I stepped closer than protocol allowed." Naomi stared at him, realization dawning like a bruise. "You protected me." 79. Elias's silence confirmed it. Naomi felt anger and gratitude collide within her, neither gaining ground. "Why didn't you say this before?" she demanded. Elias's jaw tightened. "Because the past wasn't supposed to touch the present. I thought you were safe. I thought everything connected to that time was gone." His voice darkened. "But whoever is targeting you now, they were part of that world. Part of the danger your father tried to outrun." Naomi pressed a hand to her forehead, the room spinning with revelations. "So the messages, the figure, all of this is tied to him?" 78. Elias nodded. "Someone who knew him. Someone who knew you existed." Naomi felt her chest tighten with a grief she hadn't anticipated. Her father had been a complicated man, loving, flawed, desperate to shield her from shadows she never fully understood. But she had never imagined those shadows would follow her into adulthood, into boardrooms and penthouses and meticulously guarded success. She met Elias's gaze. "Why hide this from me?" she asked. His stare softened. "Because I didn't want to reopen wounds. And because once you knew, you'd become a different kind of target." 76. A sudden vibration erupted on her tablet, slicing through the tension. Naomi crossed the room, dread pooling in her gut. The new message glowed on the screen like a taunt carved into glass. "You can't outrun blood." Her hand shook. Elias stepped closer, scanning the message instantly. His expression darkened into something colder, more dangerous. "They're escalating. This isn't random," he said. "They want psychological leverage." Naomi swallowed hard. "They want me afraid." Elias shook his head. "No. They want you unstable, vulnerable, distracted." His eyes lifted to hers with chilling certainty. "The timing isn't accidental." 81. As if summoned by the threat, a sharp buzz rattled through the penthouse security panel. Unauthorized entry attempt. Garage level. Naomi's heart lurched. Elias moved instantly, all hesitation evaporating into decisive action. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice clipped but steady. They moved through the penthouse corridors, the lights dimming automatically into emergency mode. Naomi felt as though the walls themselves held their breath. The elevator blinked with red warnings, indicating manual override from below. Someone was coming up. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. 72. Elias positioned Naomi near the reinforced wall, drawing his concealed weapon with lethal calm. "Whoever it is, they planned this," he murmured. "This isn't a test." Naomi watched the elevator numbers climb, 7, 8, 9, each one a countdown to collision. "Is it him?" she whispered. Elias didn't look back. "No," he said quietly. "He'd never risk you directly." The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. But instead of a masked intruder, a small metallic drone hovered in the doorway, its lens glowing with an eerie blue pulse. Elias reacted instantly, firing a precise shot that sent sparks ricocheting across the entryway. The drone crashed, sizzling. 82. Smoke curled upward, carrying the faint ozone smell of burnt circuitry. Naomi felt her pulse hammering wildly. Elias moved forward, retrieving the pieces with surgical efficiency. "Surveillance," he muttered. "This was meant to map the interior and record your reaction." Naomi felt her stomach twist. "So they know we're onto them." Elias shook his head. "They already knew. What they want now is pressure." He set the damaged drone on the table, its small frame still twitching like a dying insect. "This device is military grade. Someone with resources is behind this." 76. Naomi sank into a nearby chair, mind racing. "So what's their endgame?" Elias studied her with a haunted intensity. "To expose the past your father died trying to bury. And to take something from you that you can't recover." Naomi felt the air thicken around her. "What?" Elias's voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Your certainty. Your identity. Maybe even your company. They want to shatter the foundation you built, and they're using your history to do it." 70. Naomi felt a tremor move through her, not of fear, but clarity. The intruder, the messages, the drone, Elias's confession. They weren't isolated threads. They were pieces of a single design, one rooted in a past she never fully understood. She looked at Elias, seeing him not as a stranger hired for protection, but as someone bound to her story long before she ever knew his name. "Then we face it," she said softly. Elias's eyes held hers, steady and resolute. "Together," he replied. 65. But high above the city, in another darkened room, a figure watched Naomi's building through a cracked window. A faint smile curved beneath the hood. The game had begun, and they were only now realizing how much he already knew. 36. Dawn arrived muted and gray, as if the sky itself hesitated to reveal what the coming hours would bring. Naomi stood at the kitchen counter with a mug she hadn't touched, the steam long faded. Elias reviewed security logs beside her, the glow from his tablet casting faint shadows across his focused expression. The night had left them both wired and worn, suspended between revelation and danger. Naomi watched him, the weight of his confession still pressing against her ribs. He had known her before she ever knew him. He had protected her once in childhood, silently, invisibly. Now he was entangled in her present, and she wasn't sure whether that made her safer or more vulnerable. 92. "What aren't you telling me?" Naomi asked finally, voice low. Elias looked up, his eyes holding an exhaustion she hadn't noticed before. "I told you the truth," he said. "But I didn't tell you everything." Naomi felt her pulse tighten. "Then tell me everything now." Elias hesitated, his jaw flexing as if weighing consequences. "The people your father was involved with, they weren't just criminals or rival operators. They were part of a syndicate, quiet, well-funded, deeply entrenched. Someone you would never suspect." Naomi's grip on her mug tightened. "Why target me now?" Elias glanced down at the shattered drone on the table. "Because your father tried to break free. And someone thinks you inherited more than his ambition." 104. Before Naomi could respond, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Against better judgment," she answered. A distorted voice slid through the speaker like oil. "Naomi Caldwell," it whispered. "Your father kept secrets that don't belong to you." Naomi froze. Elias moved closer, listening. The voice continued, "You've risen high, but you're standing on a foundation built from someone else's debt." Naomi steadied herself. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled softly. "Someone who knew him better than you ever did." The line clicked dead. For a heartbeat, the room felt cavernous, swallowed by dread. Elias reached for the phone, checking for traceable signals. None. "They're watching every move," he said. "They know you're ready to fight." 103. Naomi felt anger simmer beneath fear. "They think I'm weak," she said. "They think I can be manipulated like he was." Elias shook his head. "No. They think you're dangerous. That's why they're pushing now, before you figure out the truth he kept from you." Naomi stared out the window, the city still waking, unaware of the storm circling her life. "What truth?" she whispered. Elias stepped closer, his voice gentler. "Your father didn't just get involved with them. He tried to expose them. Someone close to him betrayed him. That's why he disappeared." Naomi's breath caught. She had spent years imagining her father's final days. Never had she imagined betrayal. 99. But Elias's next words shook her more deeply. "And I think the person behind these messages was tied to that betrayal." Naomi turned sharply. "Do you know who it is?" Elias hesitated. "I have suspicions. But suspicions without proof become accusations that get people killed." Naomi stepped nearer, anger flaring. "You've been holding back because you want to protect me. But protecting me doesn't mean shielding me from truth." Elias held her gaze. "You're right. And that's why we have to go back. Back to the only place this started." Naomi felt a chill crawl up her spine. "You mean the old neighborhood?" Elias nodded. "There's someone there who knows more than they've admitted." 102. 2 hours later, they were in the car, driving toward the streets Naomi had once walked as a girl, streets that shaped her ambition and haunted her memories. The closer they came, the heavier the air felt, thick with echoes she'd spent a lifetime outrunning. Elias parked a block from Miss Hargrove's building. The elderly woman had seen the hooded figure before anyone else. She had said Elias moved like Naomi's father. Naomi needed to know why that comparison had emerged so easily. As they approached the building, children's laughter drifted through open windows, a haunting contrast to the tension cording Naomi's spine. Elias walked slightly ahead, scanning. 102. Miss Hargrove greeted them with surprise and warmth, though Naomi noticed a flicker of worry in her eyes. "You came back," she murmured. Naomi nodded. "We need your help." Miss Hargrove ushered them inside, lowering herself into her worn armchair. "I remember your father," she began, "and the people who came looking for him. Men with sharp eyes and soft voices. They watched the building for weeks." Naomi felt her stomach twist. Miss Hargrove's gaze shifted toward Elias. "And you?" "I remember you too. Always in the shadows, always watching." Naomi turned toward Elias, stunned. He lowered his head. "I didn't want her to know," he said quietly. 94. Miss Hargrove nodded slowly. "You cared for her even then." The statement stretched into the room, charged with unexpected truth. Naomi felt a tremor move through her, not fear, but understanding. Miss Hargrove continued. "Last week, I saw someone else. A man with a voice like broken gravel. He asked about your father. Asked about you. Said your rise made you vulnerable." Elias's eyes sharpened. "Did he give a name?" Miss Hargrove shook her head. "But he wore a ring, silver, engraved. Same one your father feared." Naomi felt cold creep through her limbs. Elias explained, "The syndicate uses encoded rings to identify rank. Whoever visited her is high level." 98. As they left the apartment, Naomi's mind raced. A figure from her father's past had resurfaced, tracking her movements, circling her life like a predator waiting for the precise moment to strike. Elias walked beside her, every step syncopated with tension. "We're running out of time," he said. "They'll make a move soon, something bigger than messages or drones." Naomi stopped in the hallway, turning to him. "Why do you care this much?" Elias met her gaze, no barriers left. "Because I failed him," he said softly. "I was assigned to protect him as well. And I didn't see the betrayal coming. I can't fail you." 96. On the drive back, Naomi struggled to absorb everything: the betrayal, the surveillance, the resurfacing syndicate figure. Yet one thought kept returning, circling her mind like a quiet whisper. Her father had tried to expose them. He had chosen integrity over survival. And someone had killed him for it. Now they were coming for her. She watched Elias's profile as he drove, the determined set of his jaw. He wasn't just guarding her. He was seeking redemption. She wondered whether redemption was ever enough to stop someone determined to destroy them. 85. Back at the penthouse, dusk unfurled across the city in long violet strokes. Naomi and Elias entered cautiously, senses heightened. The moment they stepped inside, the lights flickered. Twice. Then the screens around the room lit up simultaneously, each displaying the same message in stark white text. You cannot protect what was never yours to keep. Naomi's breath hitched. Elias moved instantly, drawing her behind him while scanning for breach points. Then another message appeared, larger, centered on the main screen. We're done watching. It's time to collect what your father stole. 90. A chill washed over her. What did he steal? She whispered. Elias's expression hardened. Information. Proof of their operations. Evidence that could bring them down. Naomi stared at the screen as the message faded, replaced by a single flickering image. A location marker. The old shipping yard at the city's edge. Elias's shoulders tensed. This is a trap. Naomi squared her shoulders. It's also an invitation. Elias turned toward her, conflict burning in his eyes. If we go, everything changes. Naomi stepped closer, voice steady. Everything's already changed. We end this now. 89. Outside, the first stars pierced the darkening sky, unaware they were witnessing the beginning of a collision years in the making. One born of hidden loyalties, buried truth, and a legacy Naomi never asked to inherit but was finally ready to confront. 38. The night clung to the city like a shroud as Naomi and Elias approached the abandoned shipping yard, its rusted cranes looming like forgotten giants against the bruised horizon. Wind swept through the hollow alleys of stacked containers, carrying the metallic tang of old machinery and the faint echo of something more ominous, anticipation. Naomi stepped from the car with steady resolve, though her heartbeat pressed sharply in her chest. Elias moved beside her, posture taut, every sense sharpened. This was the place their unseen adversary had chosen. The trap had been set long before they arrived. 86. Floodlights flickered awake the moment they crossed the yard's threshold, washing the scene in harsh white. Naomi blinked against the sudden brightness, her breath catching as shadows peeled back to reveal a lone figure standing near the largest warehouse door. Hooded. Motionless. Familiar in a way that made the air thicken around her. Elias stepped in front of her, weapon unholstered but angled downward, calculated, cautious. The figure's voice cut through the wind like a serrated blade. Naomi Caldwell. You finally came. The distortion was gone now, replaced by the unmistakable cadence of someone who spoke with confidence born of history. 89. Naomi took a step forward, ignoring Elias's outstretched arm. Who are you? She demanded. The figure lifted his head, the hood falling back to reveal a man with a sharply cut gaze, eyes cold, reflective, like frozen steel. A silver ring glinted on his hand, engraved with the same symbol Miss Hargrove had described. My name is Marcel Dravin, he said softly. I knew your father better than anyone. The admission hit Naomi like a blow. Elias stiffened, muscles coiling. Marcel smiled. He would be proud you've climbed so high. But he'd be disappointed in how little you understand. 92. Naomi forced her fear down. You were part of the syndicate, she said. Marcel tilted his head. Not part. Leader. Your father worked under me for years. Elias's grip tightened on his weapon, fury flaring across his face. Marcel's gaze flicked toward him with mild amusement. Ah, Ward. Still playing guard dog. Still pretending you didn't fail him. Naomi felt the accusation slice open a wound she hadn't realized was so deep. Elias didn't flinch, but the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. Marcel stepped closer. Your father tried to betray us. He stole something. Something of extraordinary value. 95. Naomi's voice sharpened. What did he take? Marcel's smile thinned. Evidence. Documents. Names. Enough to ruin powerful people. He hid them before he died, hid them so well we spent years searching. He paused, studying Naomi with unsettling interest. But he left a trail only someone who inherited his instincts could follow. Naomi felt the air constrict around her. You think I know where the evidence is? Marcel chuckled. I know you do, even if you haven't realized it yet. Elias stepped protectively in front of her. She doesn't know anything. Leave her out of this. 88. Marcel's expression hardened. Your father made her part of it. His last act before disappearing was sending a message, encrypted, personal. It went to a child's account. A dormant inbox. Hers. Naomi froze. Childhood memories flickered, old library computers, forgotten passwords, the account she abandoned before high school. A slow, hollow dread spread through her. Marcel saw her reaction and smiled with cold satisfaction. There it is. Realization. Elias shifted closer, voice low. Don't listen to him. But Naomi couldn't ignore the truth thrumming beneath Marcel's words. Her father had left something for her. Something dangerous. 96. Marcel raised a small device, sleek, ominous. We're done speaking. Bring me the contents of that account, Naomi, or everything you've built burns tonight. He snapped his fingers. Warehouse doors groaned open. 4 armed men stepped into the light. Naomi felt Elias tense, preparing for the inevitable. Stay behind me, he murmured. But Naomi stepped forward instead. If you had the power to burn my world, she said, voice steady, you would have done it already. You're missing something. You need me. Marcel's eyes narrowed. Confidence looks good on you. Misplaced, but good. 85. Naomi continued. You said my father betrayed you. But he didn't run. He confronted you. That scares you. Marcel's jaw tightened, so slight most would miss it, but Naomi saw. Elias saw. Marcel stepped back, signaling his men. Take her. Elias moved with lethal speed. The yard erupted into chaos. Gunshots cracked like thunder. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal. Elias shielded Naomi, returning fire with precision, but Marcel's men pushed forward. Naomi ducked behind a container, adrenaline roaring through her veins. Elias fought like a man chasing redemption, every motion sharp and desperate. 91. One assailant lunged toward Naomi, tackling her. She hit the ground hard, vision blurring. The man reached for her wrist, then jerked violently as Elias's weapon discharged. Naomi crawled to cover, breath ragged. Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet as more men closed in. We need to move, he shouted. They raced toward the far end of the yard, weaving between containers. Marcel's furious voice echoed across the metal labyrinth. Bring her to me. Naomi's pulse hammered. Every step felt like sprinting through her own past, through memories twisted into weapons. 93. At the edge of the yard stood a rusted loading office. Elias kicked the door open and ushered her inside. They barricaded it with overturned furniture. Naomi leaned against the wall, trembling. Elias checked ammo, breathing hard. Are you hurt? No, she whispered. But Elias, the inbox. If what he said is true. Elias met her gaze, understanding dawning. Your father didn't trust the agency or the syndicate. He trusted you. Naomi swallowed. Then we have to find whatever he left. Elias nodded. We will. But first we get out alive. 81. Heavy footsteps thundered outside. The barricade rattled under force. Elias braced himself, weapon raised. Naomi searched the room desperately. Her eyes landed on an old fuse box beside a window overlooking the floodlight tower. An idea sparked. Elias, she whispered, pointing. He followed her gaze, realization forming. If we kill the lights, he said, we break their advantage. Naomi nodded. Do it. Elias fired at the fuse box. Sparks exploded. Darkness swallowed the yard. Shouts erupted outside, confusion, disarray. Elias grabbed Naomi's hand. Run. 80. They slipped through a side door and sprinted into the chaos. Naomi felt the world tilt, the dark, the wind, the adrenaline fusing into a single burning line of survival. They reached the fence. Elias boosted her up. She pulled him after. Behind them, Marcel shouted her name, a furious snarl lost in the rising sirens of approaching law enforcement, alarms triggered by the power surge. Naomi and Elias disappeared into the night, lungs burning, hearts pounding. 74. Hours later, safe in a quiet safe house overlooking the waking city, Naomi sat before an ancient laptop retrieved from deep storage, a relic from her childhood. Elias stood beside her, silent, waiting. Naomi typed the forgotten email address. The password field blinked. She entered the only phrase her father always whispered when leaving home. "Stay sharp, little star." The inbox opened. One unread message. One attachment. Elias exhaled. Naomi clicked. 73. Inside lay the truth. Files, names, ledgers, recordings, irrefutable evidence of the syndicate's operations. The legacy her father died protecting. Tears welled as she whispered, "He didn't abandon me. He prepared me." Elias placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Now we finish what he started." 46. Outside, first light washed the skyline in gold. Naomi felt something shift inside her, not fear, not grief, but clarity. She wasn't running anymore. She was rising. The past had chased her into the present. Now she would carry it into the future, not as a burden, but as truth. A legacy reclaimed. A reckoning earned. 49.